At just 8 years old, I discovered my parents had been paying our grandma to secretly drug me and my twin sister with sedatives hidden in her special tea. I found her notebook tracking every dose and payment, but when we showed them the proof, they just sent us to her house more often. Imagine discovering that the person you trusted most, your sweet, loving grandma, wasn't just baking cookies and telling stories. She was systematically drugging you. And the worst part? Your own parents were paying her to do it. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about how two kids fought back against the people who were supposed to protect them most. My grandma, she was my favorite, truly. So vibrant, even in her 70s, still full of life. She treated my twin sister and me like we hung the moon. While other relatives just saw us as loud, energetic kids, Grandma, she'd just laugh. You're young, you're supposed to have energy. My parents always seemed so relieved when we visited her, which was a lot. They'd always say, she just knows how to handle you two better than anyone. And there'd be these weird, almost too happy smiles. At first, we just thought it was sweet, Grandma giving our parents a break. But then, when we turned 8, things started getting strange. Every single visit, she'd serve us these special teas and desserts, always homemade. You two have such busy lives, she'd coo. You need this to calm yourselves down. And every single time, we'd leave her house feeling this unnatural tiredness, like all our usual kid joy had been sucked right out of us. It felt wrong, deep down, but what could we do? We just figured it was Grandma's old-school wisdom about getting enough rest. Then came the conversations. Grandma started telling us stories, these weird parables about overly energetic young people who caused trouble, who exhausted their parents, who just desperately needed discipline to become responsible. I actually laughed it off, can you believe it? But my sister? She got really uneasy. When we tried to mention it to our parents, they'd just shrug it off. She just wants what's best for you. The real turning point, though, the one that blew everything open, happened when Grandma insisted we stay with her for a whole weekend. It'll be a weekend to remember, she promised, a warm smile on her face. But something about her voice, her eyes, just sent a chill down my spine. Still, I didn't want to disappoint her. The night before our big visit, I realized I'd left my backpack at her place. I remembered she often hid a key under her doormat. So, late that evening, I decided to swing by and grab it. Her house was eerily quiet, completely empty. I found my backpack on the dining table, but then my eyes locked onto something else. A notebook. Our names were on the cover. My heart started pounding even before I opened it. Inside, oh God, pages and pages, detailing every single visit. Notes about how energetic we were when we arrived. And then, in chilling detail, carefully timed dosages of sedatives she'd been slipping into our tea and desserts. Observations about how fast we fell asleep, how long we stayed subdued, even evaluations of how effectively she was managing our excessive energy. But the absolute worst? The last page. It was titled Parental Agreement. It listed amounts paid to Grandma by our parents for each calming session. Dates, receipts, even notes from my parents, praising Grandma for her methods and thanking her for making their lives easier. My stomach just churned. Grandma wasn't just sedating us. Our own parents were paying her to drug us into compliance. My hands were shaking so hard, but I quickly photographed every single page. Then, I put the notebook back exactly where I found it. That night, I showed the evidence to my sister. She was furious, but we both knew confronting our parents head-on would be a disaster. They'll just say it's for our own good, she warned, her voice tight with anger. Instead, we decided to handle it ourselves. The next morning, we told Grandma we weren't feeling well, postponing the weekend visit. How about Monday afternoon instead? We suggested. She sounded mildly annoyed, but she agreed. That bought us time. On Monday, we arrived earlier than she expected. Grandma was already setting out teacups and plates of cookies, and there it was, a small medicine bottle, suspiciously tucked behind her tea set. She beamed at us, completely oblivious. Ready to relax and behave yourselves? She asked. Actually, my sister said, her voice firm, cutting through the fake calm. I think things are about to change around here. Grandma's expression instantly shifted. Her warmth drained away, replaced by sudden, panicked anxiety. The bottle on the counter clinked loudly as her hand actually trembled. Her whole plan, built on quiet, calculated deception, was finally, violently, coming undone. I watched Grandma's face transform, her usual warm smile twisting into something I'd never seen before. Her eyes darted between my sister and me, then to that medicine bottle she'd been trying to hide. The kitchen suddenly felt tiny, suffocating. The afternoon sunlight streaming through her lace curtains, making everything look sharper, more real. My sister stepped forward, her small frame somehow looking bigger, braver. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, holding it up. The photos of that damning notebook were crystal clear on the screen. Grandma gasped, her hand flying to her chest, and she just sank into one of her kitchen chairs. For a moment, the only sound was the loud tick-tock of the grandfather clock in the hall, counting off seconds that felt like hours. Then, she did something I never expected. She laughed. Not her usual warm chuckle, but a bitter, chilling sound that made my skin crawl. Slowly, she stood, smoothing down her floral apron with trembling hands. She walked to the counter, picked up the teapot, and poured herself a cup with an almost unnerving calm. The liquid steamed in the afternoon light. She took a long, deliberate sip before turning back to us. Her voice, when it came, was steady, almost businesslike. She explained that we didn't understand what we were dealing with, that our parents were at their wits' end with us, that we were exhausting them, ruining their marriage, destroying their careers with our constant need for attention and supervision. She actually had the nerve to say she was helping everyone, including us. My sister's face flushed crimson. Her knuckles were white as she gripped her phone, jaw working, trying to find the words. But Grandma wasn't finished. She walked closer, her sensible shoes clicking on the linoleum floor. She said we were being dramatic, that a little herbal tea to calm hyperactive children was hardly a crime. She claimed the notebook was just her way of monitoring our health, making sure we were getting proper rest. The medicine bottle on the counter seemed to grow larger in my peripheral vision. I knew what was in it. The photos we'd taken had shown the label clearly, prescription sedatives. Not herbs. Strong ones, too, according to what I'd looked up online the night before. Grandma must have noticed where I was looking. She moved casually, picking up the bottle and slipping it into her apron pocket. Her movements were smooth, practiced. How many times had she done this? How many cups of tea had we choked down without knowing? My sister finally found her voice. She told Grandma we knew about the money, about the payments from our parents, about the calming sessions they'd been paying for. That's when Grandma's composure finally cracked. A muscle in her cheek twitched. She tried a different approach. Her voice softened, becoming the loving grandmother we'd always known. She said she loved us, that everything she did was out of love, that sometimes adults had to make hard choices for children's well-being. She even reached out to touch my sister's face, but my sister sharply recoiled. The rejection seemed to anger Grandma. Her mask slipped completely. She told us we had no idea what we'd put our parents through. The sleepless nights, the constant chaos, the inability to have a moment's peace. She spat out that we were selfish, ungrateful children who couldn't appreciate when people were trying to help us. My chest tightened. Part of me just wanted to run, to get out of this house that had always felt so safe, but now felt like a terrifying trap. But my sister stood firm, and I drew strength from her presence beside me. Grandma walked to the kitchen phone on the wall. She declared she was calling our parents, that they'd sort this out right away. My sister moved like lightning, putting herself between Grandma and the phone. It was such a bold move for an 8-year-old, but desperation made us brave. Grandma's eyes narrowed. She told us to move aside, that we were being ridiculous. When neither of us budged, she tried to push past my sister, not roughly, but with a surprising firmness. My sister stumbled but held her ground. I knew we needed to leave. The situation was escalating in a way that truly scared me. I grabbed my sister's hand and pulled her toward the door. But Grandma was faster than her age suggested. She blocked our path, her body filling the doorway to the hall. The standoff lasted only seconds, but it felt eternal. 3 generations facing each other in a kitchen that smelled of cookies and betrayal. Finally, Grandma stepped aside. But as we passed, she grabbed my sister's phone. Her grip was surprisingly strong, stronger than I'd ever expected from her wrinkled hands. My sister yanked back, but Grandma held firm. They struggled briefly, the phone between them like a prize in a terrible game. I tried to help, grabbing Grandma's wrist, but she shook me off easily. In the scuffle, the phone fell, clattering on the floor. The screen cracked, a spiderweb of lines across the surface. We all froze, staring at the damaged phone. Grandma bent down slowly and picked it up. She examined it with a chilling satisfaction, then handed it back to my sister. The photos were still there, barely visible through the cracked screen, but who knew if they'd be recoverable? Grandma straightened her apron again, that calm mask sliding back into place. She told us to go home, that she'd be calling our parents to discuss our behavior. The threat in her voice was crystal clear. We were in deep trouble, and she was going to make sure of it. We left through the front door, our legs shaky. The afternoon sun felt too bright after the dimness of Grandma's kitchen. We walked quickly, then ran, not stopping until we reached the park 2 blocks away. My sister examined her phone, trying desperately to access the photos through the damaged screen. Some were corrupted, but a few, thankfully, remained clear. We sat on the swings, trying to process what had happened. Our grandmother, who'd baked us cookies and read us stories, had been drugging us. Our parents, who were supposed to protect us, had paid her to do it. The entire world felt upside down. My sister kicked at the wood chips beneath the swing. She said we needed a better plan. Confronting Grandma directly hadn't worked. She'd twisted everything, made us sound like problem children making up crazy stories. Poor children discovering their own grandmother has been drugging them with their parents' permission. It's unimaginable how betrayed we felt. And with her calling our parents, we were probably facing their anger next. I suggested we try talking to a teacher at school, but my sister shook her head. She reminded me of Grandma's words, a little herbal tea to calm children. Would anyone believe it was more than that? We were 8 years old. Grandma was a respected elderly woman. Our parents were upstanding members of the community, who would take our word over theirs. The walk home felt endless. Every car that passed made us tense, wondering if it was our parents coming to find us. When we finally reached our house, both cars were in the driveway. They were home early. That was never a good sign. We entered through the back door, hoping to slip upstairs unnoticed, but our mother's voice called out immediately, telling us to come to the living room. Her tone made my stomach drop. Grandma had already called. Our parents sat on the couch, their faces stern. Our father's jaw was set in that grim way that meant we were in serious trouble. Our mother's lips were pressed into a thin line. And there it was, between them on the coffee table, Grandma's notebook. The very one we'd photographed. Somehow, she'd brought it over. Our mother spoke first. She said Grandma had told them everything about us sneaking into her house, about going through her private belongings, about taking photos without permission, about being disrespectful and aggressive when confronted. The story, twisted through Grandma's lens, made us sound like little delinquents. Our father added that they were disappointed in us, that Grandma had only ever shown us love and kindness, and this was how we repaid her. He said we'd been acting out lately, and this was the final straw. There would be consequences. My sister tried to explain our side. She mentioned the sedatives, the payments, the detailed notes about drugging us. But our mother cut her off. She said Grandma had already explained the notebook. It was a health journal, keeping track of our visits and making sure we were eating properly. The herbal teas were for our own good, to help us calm down and focus. The payments? Those were to reimburse Grandma for the special ingredients and her time. Nothing sinister, she said, smooth as silk, just family helping family. Our mother's voice was so practiced, so calm. She'd had time to prepare this story with Grandma. I wanted to scream. They were lying to our faces, pretending the terrifying truth we'd discovered didn't even exist. But what could we do? We were children. They were adults. The power dynamic was terrifyingly clear. Our father announced our punishment. We were grounded for 2 weeks. No TV, no games, no friends over. And the kicker? We'd be spending every single afternoon at Grandma's house, where we'd apologize for our behavior and help her with chores to make amends. The thought of being alone with her again, knowing what we knew, made my skin crawl. My sister started to protest, but our father's hardened expression silenced her. He said the discussion was over. We were to go to our rooms and think about our actions. Tomorrow, we'd write apology letters to Grandma. We climbed the stairs in defeat. In the hallway between our rooms, my sister grabbed my hand. She whispered that this wasn't over, that we'd find another way. But looking at her cracked phone and thinking about the united front of adults against us, I wondered what way that could possibly be. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Every shadow looked like Grandma's silhouette. Every creak of the house sounded like her footsteps. Tomorrow, we'd have to go back to her house, sit at her table, drink her tea, pretend everything was normal while she pretended to be the loving grandmother. The thought made me pull my blanket up higher, even though the room wasn't cold. Somewhere in the house, I could hear our parents talking in low voices, planning, probably deciding how to handle their problem children. But my sister was right. This wasn't over. We'd found the truth once. We could find more evidence. We just had to be smarter about it. No more direct confrontations. No more giving them a warning. We'd play along, pretend to be the subdued, obedient children they wanted. And while they thought they'd won, we'd gather what we needed to protect ourselves. The moon cast pale light through my window. Tomorrow would come too soon, bringing with it another visit to Grandma's house. Another cup of tea we'd have to pretend to drink. Another afternoon of fighting to stay alert while substances tried to steal our energy. But we'd survived 8 years of this without knowing. Now that we knew the truth, we could survive a little longer. Long enough to find a way out. Long enough to make someone believe us. long enough to save ourselves from the people who were supposed to love us most. The morning arrived with harsh sunlight and the sound of our mother knocking on my door. She entered without waiting for permission, carrying the apology letter I was supposed to write. She placed blank paper and a pen on my desk, then stood behind me with her arms crossed. Her presence felt heavy, suffocating. I picked up the pen with reluctant fingers. My mother watched as I wrote each word, correcting me when my apology didn't sound sincere enough. She made me rewrite it 3 times before she was satisfied. The final version made me sick to read. It apologized for invading Grandma's privacy, for making wild accusations, for being disrespectful to an elder who only wanted to help us. My sister emerged from her room holding her own letter. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and I knew she'd been crying. Our mother collected both letters and tucked them into her purse. She informed us we'd be leaving for Grandma's house in an hour. We were to dress nicely and behave perfectly. The car ride felt like being transported to prison. Our father drove, while our mother sat rigidly in the passenger seat. Neither spoke to us. The radio played softly, filling the silence with meaningless chatter. My sister reached over and squeezed my hand. Her palm was sweaty, but I held on tight. Grandma's house looked the same as always from the outside. The garden gnomes smiled, their painted smiles. The wind chimes tinkled gently in the breeze. But now I saw it differently. This wasn't a safe haven. It was a place where we'd been quietly poisoned for months. Our parents walked us to the door like guards escorting prisoners. Grandma answered, wearing her favorite yellow dress, the one with tiny flowers embroidered on the collar. She looked frail and harmless, every inch the loving grandmother. The performance was flawless. She accepted our letters with gracious humility, reading them while we stood awkwardly in her foyer. She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, playing the part of the wounded grandmother perfectly. Our parents ate it up, patting her shoulder and assuring her we'd learned our lesson. After our parents left, the atmosphere shifted. Grandma's tears dried instantly. She folded our letters and placed them on the hall table. Then she turned to us with that same businesslike expression from yesterday. She informed us we'd be helping with housework as part of our punishment, starting with cleaning the kitchen. We spent the morning scrubbing counters and mopping floors under her watchful eye. She critiqued every movement, finding fault with how we held the mop, how we wrung out the cleaning cloths. The physical work wasn't hard, but her constant criticism wore us down. At noon, she announced it was time for lunch. My stomach clenched. She'd prepared sandwiches and, of course, her specialty. The cups sat waiting on the table, steam rising invitingly. She watched us expectantly. My sister picked up her sandwich and took a small bite. I did the same, though the bread felt like cardboard in my mouth. Neither of us touched the tea. Grandma noticed immediately. She reminded us that wasting food and drink was rude, especially after our recent behavior. We had no choice. I lifted the cup to my lips and pretended to sip. The liquid barely touched my tongue before I lowered it again. My sister did the same. Grandma's eyes narrowed. She could tell we weren't really drinking. She stood and walked behind my chair. Her hand pressed down on my shoulder, firm and insistent. She told me to drink properly, that she'd made this tea specially for us. Her fingers dug into my shoulder when I hesitated. I took a real sip this time, just enough to satisfy her. The tea tasted normal, sweet with honey, fragrant with herbs. But I knew what was hidden in that sweetness. My sister drank, too. Her face carefully blank. Grandma returned to her seat, satisfied for the moment. She chatted about mundane things while we ate, the weather, her garden, a TV show she'd watched. All the while, she monitored our tea consumption with sharp eyes. After lunch, she suggested we rest in the living room. The drowsiness hit faster than usual, probably because we'd been fighting it so hard. My eyelids grew heavy. My sister's head began to nod. Grandma watched us with satisfaction, her knitting needles clicking rhythmically. I pinched my thigh hard under the afghan she draped over me. The pain helped me stay conscious, though everything felt foggy and distant. Beside me, my sister had given in to sleep, her breathing deep and even. Grandma continued knitting, humming softly to herself. Fighting the sedatives felt like swimming through molasses. Every thought came slowly. Every movement required enormous effort. But I forced myself to stay aware, to remember everything. This was evidence. This was proof of what she was doing to us. Hours passed in a haze. Grandma woke my sister when our parents arrived to pick us up. We stumbled to the car, legitimately groggy this time. Our mother commented on how calm we seemed, how the visit must have done us good. Our father agreed, saying, maybe we'd finally learn to appreciate Grandma's wisdom. This horrifying pattern continued for days. Every afternoon, we'd be dropped at Grandma's house. My mom's got her explanation down so smooth. You'd think she practiced in front of a mirror, turning drugging children into helping with herbal supplements. Every afternoon, She'd serve us drugged tea and watch us struggle against sleep. We tried different tactics, spilling the tea accidentally, claiming we were too full to drink, even pretending to be sick. Nothing worked. She always found a way to make us consume at least some of it. The worst part was watching our parents' satisfaction. They commented on how much better behaved we were, how the discipline was working. They praised Grandma for her patience with us. They even increased her payment, which I overheard them discussing. One evening, my sister and I grew desperate. We needed evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. The photos on her broken phone were barely visible now, the screen too damaged to display them clearly. We needed something more concrete. The opportunity came unexpectedly. One afternoon, Grandma received a phone call that clearly agitated her. Her voice rose as she argued with someone about a medical prescription. She paced the kitchen, gesturing wildly, completely focused on her conversation. My sister noticed it first, Grandma's purse, sitting open on the counter. The medicine bottle was visible inside, along with what looked like prescription papers. My sister glanced at me, and I understood immediately. While Grandma continued her heated phone conversation in the other room, my sister crept to the counter. Her hands shook as she pulled out the medicine bottle. The label was clear, a powerful sedative, prescribed to Grandma for severe insomnia. The recommended dose was 1 pill at bedtime. The prescription papers showed she'd been refilling it monthly for the past year. I grabbed Grandma's notepad from beside the phone and quickly copied down the medication name, dosage, and prescription number. My sister took the papers and held them up while I photographed them with my own phone, praying the images would be clear enough. We heard Grandma's conversation ending. My sister shoved everything back into the purse while I pocketed my phone and the notepad page. We scrambled back to our seats just as Grandma returned, her face flushed with annoyance from her phone call. She seemed distracted for the rest of the visit, which worked in our favor. She didn't notice that we barely touched our tea, or that we were more alert than usual when our parents arrived. We left with our evidence tucked safely away. That night, we researched the medication online. The side effects matched everything we'd experienced: drowsiness, confusion, memory problems with repeated use. More importantly, we found warnings about giving it to children. It was dangerous, potentially harmful to developing brains. We also discovered something else. The dosage Grandma had been giving us, based on her notebook entries, was far higher than what would ever be safe for children our size. She'd been risking our health, possibly our lives, just to keep us quiet. Armed with this terrifying information, we tried again to convince our parents. We showed them the prescription details, the online warnings, the dangers of sedating children. Our mother's face went pale as she read, but our father's expression hardened. He accused us of stealing from Grandma again, of invading her privacy. He said we'd just found her insomnia medication and invented a wild story around it. When we insisted she'd been putting it in our tea, he demanded proof. The photos on my phone were clear, but he dismissed them as meaningless. Anyone could take pictures of medicine bottles, he scoffed. Our mother seemed less certain. She questioned why Grandma would need such strong medication refilled so frequently if she was only taking it for insomnia. But our father shut down her concerns, insisting we were manipulating her with our lies. The argument escalated. Our father declared we were banned from using the internet since we were using it to fuel our fantasies. He confiscated both our phones, saying we'd lost the privilege of having them. We were to continue visiting Grandma, and any more accusations would result in worse punishment. My sister broke down crying, but I felt something harder crystallize inside me. They weren't going to listen. They were choosing to stay blind to what was happening. We were truly on our own. The next few visits to Grandma's house became a brutal battle of wills. She knew we were resisting, and she grew more creative in her methods. She started making the tea stronger, adding the sedatives to cookies and other treats. She watched us like a hawk, ensuring we consumed something at every visit. We fought back in small ways. We'd hide cookies in our pockets to throw away later. We'd hold tea in our mouths and spit it out when she wasn't looking. But it was exhausting, and some of the substances always made it into our systems. The effects were cumulative. We started feeling foggy even on days we didn't visit Grandma. Our grades began to slip. Our teachers noticed we seemed tired and distracted. When they called our parents to express concern, our parents blamed it on our rebellious phase and promised to address it at home. Their solution? To increase our time at Grandma's house. Now, we went there after school 3 days a week instead of 2. Weekends were added to the schedule. The more we resisted, the more they insisted we needed Grandma's calming influence. I started keeping a journal hidden under my mattress, documenting everything: dates, times, what we were forced to consume, how we felt afterward. It was risky. If our parents found it, they'd destroy it. But I needed to record the truth somewhere. my sister developed her own coping mechanism. She started pretending to be the perfect, subdued child they wanted. She acted drowsy even when she'd managed to avoid most of the sedatives. She spoke softly, moved slowly, smiled vacantly. It broke my heart to see her disappearing into this false version of herself. But her act had an unexpected benefit. Grandma began to relax around her, believing her treatment was working. She focused more attention on me, the resistant one. This gave my sister opportunities one didn't have. During one visit, while Grandma was forcing me to drink an entire cup of tea, my sister slipped away to use the bathroom. She later told me she'd used the opportunity to search Grandma's bedroom. She'd found more evidence, receipts for the medication, printed emails between Grandma and our parents discussing the arrangement, even a calendar marking our visits and dosages. She couldn't take anything without it being noticed, but she memorized important details, dates when the arrangement had started, specific amounts our parents had paid, comments about increasing dosages when we were particularly difficult. We compared notes that night, whispering in the hallway between our rooms. The picture that emerged was horrifying. This had been planned for months before we discovered it. Our parents had approached Grandma when we turned 8, complaining about our energy levels. Grandma had suggested her herbal remedies initially, then gradually introduced the prescription sedatives. The payments had started small, just covering the cost of herbs and teas. But as the sedatives were added, the amounts increased. Our parents were now paying Grandma several hundred a month for her childcare services. It was a cold, hard business arrangement, and we were the unwilling products being processed into compliance. We realized we needed outside help, but our options were limited. With no phones and restricted internet access, we couldn't easily contact anyone. Our teachers already thought we were going through a difficult phase. Other relatives had made it clear they agreed with our parents about our excessive energy. Then my sister had an idea. Our school counselor, Mrs. Chun, had always been kind to us. She'd noticed our declining grades and tired appearance. Maybe if we could talk to her without our parents finding out, she'd listen. The challenge was getting to her. Our parents had already informed the school that we were having behavioral issues at home and shouldn't be believed if we made any wild accusations about family members. They'd effectively discredited us before we could even speak. But we found an opportunity. During library time, when our teacher was distracted, we slipped out and went straight to Mrs. Chen's office. She was surprised to see us, but welcomed us in. Her office felt safe, with its soft chairs and walls covered in encouraging posters. We told her everything. The sedatives, the payments, the months of being drugged without our knowledge. We showed her the journal I'd been keeping, the notes we'd compiled. Her expression grew more concerned with every single detail. She asked careful questions, professional, but so incredibly kind. Had we told any other adults? Did we have any physical evidence? Were we experiencing any health problems from the medication? We answered honestly, holding nothing back. When we finished, she sat quietly for a moment. Then she explained that she was required to report suspected child endangerment. She would need to contact Child Protective Services. The thought terrified us. We didn't want to be taken from our home. We just wanted the drugging to stop. She assured us that the goal would be to help our family, not separate us. But she needed us to understand that what was happening was serious. Giving children unprescribed sedatives was dangerous and illegal. Our parents and grandmother needed intervention. We returned to class shaky, but hopeful. Finally, an adult was taking us seriously. Mrs. Chun promised to handle things carefully, to ensure we were protected throughout the process. But we'd underestimated Grandma's network. By the time we got home that afternoon, our parents were waiting. The school had called them about our unauthorized visit to the counselor. Mrs. Chun had been required to notify them before taking any action. My father was furious. He accused us of trying to destroy our family with lies. My mother cried, asking why we wanted to hurt them like this. They said Mrs. Chun had explained our accusations, and they were shocked by our cruelty toward Grandma. They'd already called Grandma, who'd provided her own explanation. The medication we'd photographed was indeed hers for legitimate insomnia. The teas were herbal, nothing more. The drowsiness we experienced was psychosomatic. We'd convinced ourselves we were being drugged because we resented discipline. As for the payments, those were simple reimbursements for groceries and activities. Grandma had receipts showing purchases of food, craft supplies, and books for our visits. Everything had a paper trail that looked legitimate on the surface. Our parents informed us that they'd be homeschooling us for the remainder of the year. We couldn't be trusted at school if we were going to make false accusations against family members. They'd already filed the paperwork. Our last day would be Friday. The walls were closing in. Soon, we'd be completely isolated, with no access to outside help. Our visits to Grandma would continue, but now, Without even the brief respite of school, we'd be trapped in a cycle of drugging and control with no escape route. That night, my sister came to my room. She sat on my bed, and we held each other while she cried. She whispered that she was scared, that she didn't know how much more she could take. The constant drowsiness, the struggle to stay conscious, the knowledge that our own family was poisoning us. It was breaking her down. I held her tighter and promised we'd find a way out. We'd survived this long, we could survive longer. We just had to be smarter, more careful. We had to find evidence that couldn't be explained away or dismissed. But even as I comforted her, I felt my own hope dimming. We were 8 years old, fighting against 3 adults who controlled every aspect of our lives. They had explanations for everything, paper trails that supported their version of events. Who would believe us over them? The next morning brought a new, terrifying development. Grandma arrived at our house early while we were still eating breakfast. She announced she'd be staying with us for a few days to help with the transition to homeschooling. Our parents welcomed her warmly, saying it was generous of her to help despite our recent behavior. She moved into the guest room with a suitcase and several bags of groceries. Among them, I spotted boxes of her specialty. My heart sank. The drugging wouldn't be limited to her house anymore. She was bringing it into our home. That first day of her stay, she took over the kitchen. She prepared all our meals, served all our drinks. Every bite of food, every sip of liquid was potentially contaminated. We had no way to avoid it without starving ourselves. By evening, both my sister and I were struggling to stay awake. The doses were clearly higher than usual. Grandma watched us with satisfaction as we stumbled through dinner, barely able to hold our forks. Our parents seemed pleased by our improved behavior. The second night of Grandma's stay, I watched my sister struggle to eat her soup. Her movements were sluggish, mechanical. Grandma hovered nearby, refilling our glasses with juice that tasted too sweet. I pretended to drink while actually letting most of it dribble back into the cup. My sister's act was slipping. The increased doses made it harder for her to maintain her facade of compliance. I saw panic flash in her eyes when she nearly dropped her spoon. Grandma noticed, too, her gaze sharpening as she watched us more closely. After dinner, our parents announced they'd be going out for their weekly date night. Grandma would watch us. The moment their car pulled away, Grandma's demeanor shifted. She locked the doors, pocketed the keys, and settled into the living room with her knitting. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, fighting the familiar heaviness. My sister pinched herself repeatedly under her blanket. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. Grandma's needles clicked steadily, her eyes never leaving us. Around 9 o'clock, my sister suddenly stood and rushed toward the bathroom. Grandma called after her, but my sister didn't stop. I heard retching sounds. Grandma sighed and went to check on her, leaving her knitting on the chair. This was my chance. I stumbled to the kitchen, my legs unsteady from the sedatives. Grandma's purse sat on the counter. Inside, I found her medication bottle, nearly empty. The refill date was tomorrow. I also found something new, a small notebook, different from the one we'd discovered before. This one contained dosage calculations, mathematical formulas showing how much sedative to add based on our weight and resistance levels. Notes about gradually increasing amounts to overcome tolerance. Comments about my sister's recent improvement, and chilling plans to focus higher doses on me. I heard footsteps. Quickly, I photographed the pages with a disposable camera I'd hidden in the kitchen weeks ago, a backup plan my sister and I had devised. The flash was risky, but I had no choice. I shoved everything back just as Grandma returned, supporting my sister. My sister looked genuinely ill. She'd made herself vomit. I realized it was a desperate attempt to purge the substances. Grandma was irritated, but not suspicious. She guided my sister back to the couch and brought her water. The next morning, our parents found my sister still sick. She plated up, moaning and clutching her stomach. Our mother felt her forehead, concerned. Our father suggested she might have caught a bug at school. Neither connected it to Grandma's food. Grandma offered to stay home with my sister while I accompanied our parents on errands. I tried to protest, but our father's look silenced me. As we left, I saw my sister's terrified expression. She'd be alone with Grandma all day. The errands were mundane, grocery shopping, picking up dry cleaning. But at the pharmacy, I overheard our mother asking about children's vitamins. The pharmacist recommended several brands, then casually mentioned that some medications could interact badly with vitamins. Our mother looked thoughtful. When we returned home, my sister was unconscious on the couch. Grandma explained she'd been tired from being sick and had fallen asleep after some tea. But I knew better. The drugging had been severe. That night, I snuck into my sister's room. She was groggy, but coherent. She told me Grandma had forced her to drink 2 full cups of tea, holding her nose when she resisted. She'd fought back initially, but eventually gave in when Grandma threatened to tell our parents she was faking illness. We knew we were running out of time. The homeschooling would start Monday. We'd be trapped here with Grandma indefinitely. We needed to act now. The next day, Grandma went to refill her prescription. Our parents were both working from home. This was our window. My sister, still playing sick, stayed in bed. I volunteered to help with laundry, giving me access to the whole house. In the basement, I found boxes of our old school projects. Among them was a science fair presentation about medicines and safety. It gave me an idea. I also discovered something disturbing. Receipts in a box labeled tax documents. Receipts for Grandma's services going back 2 years, not just since we turned 8. I heard the front door. Grandma was back. I quickly hid the receipts in my pocket and carried the laundry basket upstairs. She looked suspicious, but said nothing. That afternoon, she prepared lunch as usual, but I noticed our mother watching from the doorway, her expression troubled. When Grandma served our tea, our mother suddenly asked what kind it was. Grandma smoothly replied it was chamomile with honey. Our mother nodded, but continued watching. After lunch, I felt the drowsiness hitting hard, but I forced myself to stay partially alert. I heard our mother on the phone in the next room, her voice low and urgent. I caught fragments. Concerned, behavior changes, need to be sure. The weekend passed in a blur of forced meals and fighting sedation. Grandma grew more aggressive with her dosing, especially with me. She'd stand over me until I drained every drop. My resistance was clearly frustrating her. Sunday night, our parents called a family meeting. They announced that Grandma would be returning to her own house tomorrow. They thanked her for her help, but said they wanted to handle the homeschooling transition themselves. Grandma's face went rigid, but she nodded graciously. After everyone went to bed, my sister and I met in the bathroom with the water running to mask our whispers. We knew Grandma would try something before leaving. She wouldn't give up her control easily. Monday morning came too quickly. Grandma packed her bags while preparing breakfast. The oatmeal tasted wrong, bitter underneath the brown sugar. I ate as little as possible, but she watched every spoonful. Our parents seemed distracted, checking their phones repeatedly. Our mother kept glancing at us with an expression I couldn't read. When Grandma hugged us goodbye, she whispered that she'd see us soon for our regular visits. The threat was clear. After she left, our mother sat us down. She said she'd been thinking about our accusations. She'd noticed changes in our behavior that concerned her. She wanted to take us to see our pediatrician for a checkup. Our father protested, saying we were fine, but our mother insisted. Something in her voice made him back down. She made the appointment for that afternoon. At the doctor's office, our mother asked to speak with Dr. Martinez privately first. We waited in the exam room, hope and fear warring in our chests. When they returned, Dr. Martinez looked serious. She examined us thoroughly, asking gentle questions about how we'd been feeling. She took blood samples, explaining she wanted to run some tests. Our mother held our hands during the blood draw, her grip tight. The next 3 days were tense. Grandma called repeatedly, but our mother didn't answer. Our father grew increasingly agitated. They argued in hushed tones when they thought we couldn't hear. Thursday afternoon, Dr. Martinez called. Our mother took the call in her bedroom. When she emerged, her face was pale. She told our father they needed to talk privately. We heard raised voices. Our father's disbelief. Our mother's insistence. Finally, they called us in. Our mother's eyes were red. She told us the blood tests had found traces of sedatives in our systems. Sedatives that matched Grandma's prescription. Our father sat silent, his face stricken. Our mother apologized, her voice breaking. She said she'd suspected something was wrong, but had convinced herself we were just going through a phase. She'd trusted Grandma, trusted that family would never hurt us. She'd been wrong. Our father struggled to speak. He admitted he'd been overwhelmed by our energy, frustrated by the constant motion and noise. When Grandma had offered to help, he'd been grateful. He'd never imagined she was drugging us. He thought the payments were just for babysitting and supplies. They asked us to tell them everything. This time, they listened. We showed them my hidden journal, the photos from the disposable camera I developed at the pharmacy photo center, the receipts I'd found. The evidence was overwhelming. Our mother called Grandma that night. We couldn't hear the conversation, but our mother's voice was steel. When she hung up, she told us we'd never have to see Grandma again unless we wanted to. The visits were over. The tea was over. The drugging was over. The next weeks were difficult. We started family counseling to process what had happened. Our parents struggled with guilt and anger. They'd failed to protect us, had actually paid for our harm. The therapist helped us all navigate the complicated emotions. We returned to regular school instead of homeschooling. Our teachers noticed the change immediately. We were alert, energetic ourselves again. Mrs. Chin checked in regularly, relieved that we were safe. Our relationship with our parents slowly rebuilt. They had to earn our trust back, and they knew it. They attended every therapy session, read every book the counselor recommended, and most importantly, they listened to us. Grandma tried to contact us several times. She sent letters claiming we'd misunderstood, that she'd only wanted to help. Our parents intercepted them all. Eventually, the attempt stopped. 6 months later, we were different children. Not because we'd been drugged into compliance, but because we'd learned to stand up for ourselves. We discovered that even people who claim to love you can hurt you, but also that truth has power when someone finally listens. Our parents learned, too. They learned that children's energy isn't something to be suppressed, but channeled. They found healthy ways to manage our activity levels, sports, creative projects, outdoor adventures. They learned that the noise and chaos of childhood were temporary, but the damage from trying to silence it could last forever. As for Grandma, we heard through family gossip that she'd moved to another state to live with a cousin. We never saw her again. Sometimes I wondered if she ever understood the harm she'd caused, or if she still believed she'd been helping. But mostly, we just lived. We ran. We played. We made noise. We were exactly as energetic as 8-year-olds should be. And our parents finally understood that was perfectly okay. The teacups in our house gathered dust. We drank juice and milk and water. Boring, normal drinks that tasted exactly like they should. And that ordinariness felt like the greatest gift of all.